times I thought it was the NFL, right? And then it was like, okay, author, and it was like, no, well, attorney, and then it was like, oh, artist, or oh this, or oh this, or real estate. All that I believe I'm all of those things,
Yeah.
right? Now, how life kind of works is like there's gonna be certain seasons where now this is gonna take the lead, and you're gonna learn this about who you are. And God's gonna teach you certain things about disciplines and life lessons and things to be a great father, right?
Right.
Then there's gonna be times He's got to teach you to be a great husband, right? And you're gonna have to learn different things from different people and different, like there's so many different aspects of who you are, who you created, He created you to be, to where it's like it's a process and a journey of learning.
Even if I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going in with 110% confidence because what's the deal? They're really making it okay for you to not face your problems.
Sell the
Confidence is key
product.
in
100%.
almost everything in life, but definitely in sales.
Yeah.
What's up? My name is Brandon Obey. This is the Overloaded Podcast. We got an awesome one for you today, guys. We got Kyler Dorsey over there. Ian Landry's in the house, and we got an awesome guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself, my man.
What's up, y'all, man? My name is Christopher King. Just a pleasure and an honor to be a part of y'all platform and hopefully have some great conversations and add some value to some people. So, hey, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm an attorney, an actor, model, artist, football coach. I do a little bit of everything, right? But, hey, I'm just glad to be here.
Yeah, man. So what made you want to be an attorney growing up? Go ahead.
I'm gonna keep it honest. I never wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to play in the NFL. Like that was my ultimate goal from the jump. But you know, my dad's an attorney, my brother, I got two cousins, and my aunt were all attorneys, right? So it definitely made sense. So when, you know, the football thing didn't really plan out like I wanted it to, God was like, hey, you know, I want you to go to law school. And I was like, I'm not really feeling it. But he was like, you know, you can't argue with God. Either you're going to do what he says or you're going to regret it. So I was like, you know what? All right, cool. I don't know why, but I'm going to go ahead and make it happen.
So what position did you play in high school?
Oh, cornerback.
Cornerback?
Yep, DB, man, all day.
And college ball as well?
College ball as well, man. I went to Henderson State in Arkansas.
Okay.
Led my team in interceptions, third on the team in tackles, bro. We won a couple rings. You know, it was a great time.
Oh, man. So what happened? Why didn't it work out?
Man, it was probably because I just wasn't like fast enough or just, you know, just naturally athletic. You know, coming from a smaller school, you got to be, it's one thing being good. You got to be like amazing, right? Just to kind of catch them NFL guys' eyes. And I did my pro day in New Orleans. I worked out with the Saints and literally, I think I did flawless, right? Caught every ball, my drills. It's on YouTube. Like everything was like smooth. It's just nothing really kind of formulated, right? I had a couple calls here, a couple interests, but nothing to kind of like really take off. And then this was when, you know, they were starting, you know, they got the XFL now, right? They tried to do that a couple of times before, and I actually got drafted to the team in Oregon, but it fell through. And then I tried to do the arena, but it fell through. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to spend my whole 20s chasing after this and then look up and be like, dang, like what I got to show for it. Like how I'm gonna like really take care of my family and stuff. So I was like, you know what? God told me to do this. Let me at least get the law degree to where I can at least have that as a, you know, foundation to kind of build off of. So that's what I did, and here I am now.
That's what age around did God call you to do that and you realized football wasn't going to work out?
Oh, it was literally. So I graduated it was probably like 2016, 17.
Okay.
Yeah, around there. So I was probably like 24. Yeah, probably like 24, 25. Yeah.
So I know for me, like I played college soccer and I was pretty close to going pro as well.
Okay.
I tore my Achilles. So how hard was it for you to give it up? Because I went through a real hard time trying to give up sports.
Man, and not just even sports, bro. Like anybody that's listening to this, if you've ever had to like kind of pivot from a dream that you really wanted, that you worked for, that you sacrificed for, man, it's one of the harder things in the world, right? And it's not just because, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. It's because life is weird. You'll start to see people that are doing what you want to do or wanted to do, and it'd be like, dang, you know, you can't be bitter, but you gotta kind of work through that in yourself, right? And then you gotta muster up enough faith or tenacity to hope in a dream for something else, right? Because it's one thing to say, oh, woe is me, it is what it is. I'm just gonna get this regular job and be regular and not dream big, right? Or you can say, man, it hurt. It really does hurt. But I'm gonna dream for that next big thing, right? Whether that's your wife, whether that's the house, the career, whatever that may be, you're still able to dream after kind of I don't say a disappointment, but after you kind of had to pivot from a certain dream.
100%. Because growing up, like, I don't know how early you started, but I was playing soccer since I was 4 years old.
Mm.
And at first, I had no backup plan. It was pro
Right.
or nothing, you know?
Exactly.
So when it does get taken away from you, I wouldn't say a depression, but you do go through a deep sadness
Yeah.
trying to figure out what your next dream is going to be. But I put that positivity into business and trying to become a great businessman. So
Right.
it's real tough, though, that realization that everything
is.
you've worked for since you were a kid, is now gone.
And you really learn, especially as you grow like in relationship with God too, you learn, man, sometimes like you was on that path not for that end result but because of who you became in the process, right? Like the worth ethic you kind of adopted, the resilience you kind of adopted, the people you met, the relationships you build, all that stuff is valuable. Right now, in the moment, you don't see that. You just like, dang it, I didn't get it. But like all those things are valuable. And now, just looking where I'm at now, I can see how they translate, right? I can see how playing in college ball and carrying myself a certain way, how it translates to being an attorney, an actor, a model, and doing all these different things. So you kind of gotta change your perspective a little bit when God's calling you to pivot.
So tell me this, I really want to know the modeling and acting. How'd you get into that?
Man, crazy. Literally after after football kind of done, I had like a family friend or somebody was like, "Hey, they doing this open call. You should." I think it was like BR Fashion Week or something. It was like, "Oh, you should go." So me and one of my friends, Byron Johnson, we ended up doing it, right? And it was all right. Well, we'll see what happens, right? They ended up liking me, picking me, and then that turned into like doing a Dallas Expo. Then that turned into getting signed by a couple of people, and then that turned into the auditions. And then I always love being creative and taking pictures and being in front of the camera. So it just all kind of like rolled together, and I was like, all right, bet we're gonna roll with it.
Just can go with the flow.
Yeah,
I saw the art page that you have, man. Is that something you've always been interested in, or
Yeah,
is that another
man.
thing you kind of fell into just later on in life?
Nah, like I've always taken an art class, right?
Yeah.
I remember, now this I'm dating myself. Back in the day, man,
You have
I
no
was
worries.
drawing like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, creating my own monsters,
Yeah.
and like I was doing it, right? So like I've always been in some type of art form. Now, when I got to college, it was NFL.
Mhm.
That's all I'm really focused on. So I honestly looking back, I wish I would have minored in it,
Sure.
right? Just to
sure.
kind of develop and learn some things. But yeah, that's something I've always kind of done. So after kind of that, I was able to kind of put some more time.
It's nice to have
into it.
that like as a therapeutic outlet.
It really is.
100%.
Between that and working out and listening to music, bro, like it's just easy to kind of release, right?
Mm.
Everybody needs that at some point. That's constructive. Let me say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You say.
Now, you talk a lot about God. I've always seen all of your content and everything.
Yeah.
I read this quote the other day in a book. I'm going to read it real quick. It's from Matthew Kelly. You know who Matthew Kelly is?
I've heard the name before.
Really great author. I wrote it down specifically for this. So some moments are holy and some moments are unholy, and our choices can guide a moment in either direction. If you think about it,
Yeah.
the reason why I liked what you were talking about with football is you had a choice, you had a moment
Right.
to decide. A lot of people don't realize like it's that split decision where you're deciding between two different things. Where you're like, which way do I go? Which way do I go? It can either lead bad or lead to good. You developed your artwork is awesome.
Appreciate that.
It's
Yes,
really
sir.
very good. Brandon was showing me and Kyler was showing me the other day.
Mhm.
It's pretty cool to see. You took this journey and see where you ended up.
Right.
Pretty awesome.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, one of my biggest things I try to live by is, when I die and I finally meet God, I want him to be like, man, everything I put inside you, you got out. Right. Everything. Right. So I want to die on empty. And you can't do that if you're, if in those moments you kind of choose to kind of run away from him. Right. And don't get me wrong, like everybody's flesh, you're a human being, like part of you kind of wants to. But in those moments, I'm a firm believer, and that's when it kind of defines who you are and the type of man you want to be, right? So when those moments came, I guess, and then also like as you walk with God, especially if you really like walking and learn with him, you kind of begin to develop such a relationship to where you kind of can't go the other way. You know what I mean? And even look at it from like a sexual standpoint. We're gonna talk about that as well. Like I went through my whole college career and everything, like abstaining from sex, and the football thing didn't work out, right? So part of me, my flesh was like, forget it now. Like I'm trying to forget, I'm about to do my thing right? And it was just like the spirit in me at that point was just so heavy. It was like, man, I couldn't do it. I could not physically do it if I wanted to, right? Because now you know better. It's one thing, like, you don't kind of know, you just kind of doing your thing and just worrying about it, right? It's another thing when you know what this road leads to and you know like what you're going to have to deal with if you make these decisions and you're deliberately making these decisions versus, you know, hey, I don't like it, right? But I'm going to choose your way, God, because I trust you.
It's funny you say that because a lot of kids these days, I did a life teen class at one of the churches that were here. And one of the topics was, you know, our faith. Good thing about confirming in the faith is that you can always fall back on it. It's true, but you don't want to think of it as, oh, it's a net to catch me. I could mess up as many times as I want. Man. And it's
because
crazy.
There's still consequences.
100%.
That's the thing. Like people, you know, some people when you don't really understand it, it's just like, man, when sometimes you could slip up and you might, like, God's grace is always sufficient, right? But I want God's A plan for my life, right? And good, his C, B, D plan could all be great, right? But I'm trying to get his best that he has for my life. But in order to get his best, you got to give him your best, right? And you got to be honest with yourself. I know sometimes you could just be like, all right, well, I can go wild out, do what I can. God's going to always be there. But one thing that always scared me, what if God takes his hand off of you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what if God's like, you know what? All right, Chris, you want to do your thing? Cool. Like, no, I don't want that. Nah. So, like, you know what I mean? Even you look at, you know, Saul, I don't know if, you know, if y'all like real versed in the Bible, but you look at Saul, like, you know, before King David, he was the man, right? He was killing it, doing this thing. And the guy was like, you know what? All right, cool. I'm going to take my hand off you. And then things just go downhill real fast. And it's just like, no, I gotta stay focused, right?
So was there an age that you knew you wanted to be abstinent? Like, did it just hit you, or was it something you always knew you wanted to do?
Yeah, so this is an interesting story, man. Growing up in high school, I was just like every high school guy, right? I was trying to smash. I was trying to have sex. I'm not even gonna lie to you, right? And it was frustrating because every time I tried or got close, like it felt like God was blocking. Like it was like I just couldn't get in the position. I couldn't get in the you know, alone with the girl. Like something always happened in high school where it was like, no, it's not happening, right? And literally, you could ask one of my best friends. I was like going into college like that summer before. I was like, man, I'm gonna be honest. I'm going to college. If she ain't talking about, you know, that, we not talking. Like we not doing none of that. And then going into college, man, something shifted, man. And me and one of my best friends, Byron Johnson, he went to Millsaps out of high school, and we just made kind of a pact to be like, you know what? We're not 6'6". We don't run no 4.2s, right? And we're trying to get to the NFL. We got to do anything and everything in our power to eliminate distractions and focus, right? So we made a pact: no drinking, no smoking, no sex, no none of that, right? Every time you wanted to do that, start working out. Right? Start watching film, start stretching or doing whatever you got to do, right? So literally that was the motivation behind kind of being abstinent and waiting to marriage, right? Now, as my relationship with Christ grew, I understood the motivation had to change, obviously, because what if the NFL didn't work, right? But it really taught me that discipline to be like, man, what are you willing to sacrifice for what you say you want? A lot of people say they want X, Y, and Z, but you're not willing to give up a temporary pleasure for these different things. Right.
Yeah, I heard a good quote the other day. If you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes the sacrifice. You know,
man, that's good.
So when you really think about what you want in life, you got to put that first. Yeah. Behind God, and if you don't, it's not gonna happen. Plain and simple.
And I think the scariest part of it, what if it does happen? Because now it tricks you, right? Because you're thinking, oh, that's all it took, and it kind of gives you a false sense of like, kind of success, because, you know, if we're being honest, the devil can let you succeed too, right? And he can make you think, oh, like you killing and you doing this. But the thing about the devil is he might let you succeed, but there's gonna be a price, right? He's gonna come back in some form or fashion and saying, all right, I need my payment now, right?
You kind of alluded to it, but how did you deal with the social pressures? I mean, like, you know, being around girls in college. Yeah. How'd you deal with that and still be able to do it? Because I know, listen, I'm not perfect. I know it's hard.
I'm not either. Yeah, I get it. Hey, it is, right? So it was hard in college. I'm not even gonna lie, right? So like, man, this is when social media was kind of taking off, right? And obviously, I'm an alpha. I play football. You know, I think I'm kind of handsome, right? So like, no, it was easy, right? Like if you wanted to just have sex with women, it ain't hard at all, right? But like you kind of have to you got to understand why you're doing it and who you're doing it for, right? It wasn't for me, it wasn't for my future wife, it was for God because God called me to do it, right? And I believe he gave me the ability to kind of walk it out. So I was like, you know what? All right, we going to walk this thing out. Now look, I got called everything from gay to man, you whack or you this or why you doing all that? From, people in the frat to people in my football team. Like it was some seasons I just had to be isolated and be like, you know what, I'm just doing it myself. I don't need y'all. I'm just working and I'm staying like in laser focus. And it kind of teaches you, especially in today's world, to not like compromise. Like if God told you to do something, don't compromise just because other people don't understand it, right? Like there's always going to be somebody that's not going to understand it, especially if you're trying to be great and trying to, get to where somebody rarely kind of goes. So, I mean, it kind of builds a little mental and physical toughness to be like, man, I understand that's what y'all doing, but hey, this is what he called me to do, and I'm going to make it look good, right?
That's so. I saw something the other day. I forget who was saying it on YouTube, but it was talking about God and the devil. You
Mhm.
kind of touched on it a little bit. Like God's domain is heaven.
Yeah.
The devil's domain is earth.
Mhm.
So anybody that's like, out there against you, and let me rescind that a little bit. Anybody, if it's hard, you're probably going in the right direction. It's probably what God wants
Yeah.
because God creates warriors. If it's easy and it's people are trying to convince you into something and it seems too simple,
Yeah.
and a lot of times it's, evil power, devil,
Right.
whatever you want to call
Man, the
it.
devil don't have to like if you're on his side, he don't have to give you a lot of pushback.
Yep.
You're on his side already.
Yeah, and the devil wants to make it look good. Why would he make it? Why would he make it hard for you to be bad?
Exactly.
He's gonna make
man.
it look pretty. He's gonna make it look good. He's gonna make you feel like like you're on top of the world. But
Yeah.
it's not the right thing to do.
Right, right. I mean, you even look at, when he tempted Jesus, like he tempts us with those same things,
Mhm.
right? Now you might have to like tweak it into like modern day things,
Mhm.
but it's the same three principles that he's tempting us with, right? And look, I get it. And it's not easy. It's things you want, right? Like I want to have sex. It's not that I'm a man just like everybody else. It's not that I don't want
Sure.
it. It's just that I understand like if you do it outside the confines of how God designed it, there's going to be burdens and things that you're going to have to carry with that, right? Now, I'm not saying, if somebody want to live a life, do your thing, but just understand it's going to come with some things, right?
Yep.
So have you had more than one time where you had to literally reject a girl and she feels some type of way?
Yeah, no, a bunch of times, right? I mean, that's just, but that's the reality of it, especially in college, right? Like I found myself in literally situations where it was like one move from like going to the next level, right? But I can tell y'all this, like literally, I remember vividly.
Mhm.
So I was in dorm room, touching and stuff, kissing, having a
Yeah.
good time, right? And I vividly, because I'm close, right?
Mhm.
Vividly remember like literally in the corner of the room, like seeing, I don't know if it was Angel or something, but he was telling me, just don't do it. Like I'm telling you, like it was so heavy to where I looked, like I turned and looked, and it was just like, bro, okay, I gotta stop. Like, and he was just telling me, like, man, I got something for you. Like, but I need you to wait. I need you to like, exercise that discipline. And ever since that day, not since that day, but that kind of revamped it to be like, all right, man, I can't even put myself in certain situations to make it this hard.
Yep.
Right. Because look, you playing with fire long enough,
You gonna
you
get
might
You gonna
be
get
strong,
burned.
but come on now. Like you can't put yourself, that's like an alcoholic saying, hey, I'm a week sober, but I'm gonna go to this bar and chill. Now, I'm not saying you can't, it's not impossible, but is that wise? Right? Like if you have a problem with that, why would you put yourself in an environment where that's evident,
Prevalent, yeah.
right? It's just about being smart.
You talk about a topic that we touched on in Life Teen. I kind of talk about it with people all over. When it comes to you sound like you experienced your moment with God, finding God early on. Maybe not, but a lot of
Define
people,
moment. What do you mean by
your path into grace.
Mhm.
You come in touch with God. Sounds like at an early age.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I get asked this a lot. When will it happen for me? When do I find my moment? When do I
Yeah.
get the grace of God? When do I like? How did you find it? And you're touching on something I've always wanted to talk about. But like, when did you know God was like there
So
for you?
it's so interesting, right? Because like just from my conversations to people in general, um, it's one thing to know about God, right? And know him in theory and know him like know the word intellectually. It's another thing to have an experience with him, right? I'm a firm believer there's no possible way you can have an experience with God and come out on the other side the same. Like you literally can't, right? So for me, it was like maybe 13, 14. Something was happening. Maybe I was getting in trouble. You know what kids do or whatever. And I just vividly remember in my room at my house, like getting on my knees and literally bawling and crying, be like, God, I don't want this choice. I'm tired of doing the wrong things. I'm tired of like messing up. I just want to, whatever you want me to do, I want to do. Now, I think in that moment, I didn't understand the gravitude of like the magnitude of what I was saying and doing. But ever since that day, like as I look back now, I can see he was orchestrating and protecting me and leading me and guiding my steps, right? And like like once you have that encounter with God, your convictions, your mind starts to change about certain things, right? Because now you want to do things that are pleasing to Him. Now, does that mean you don't struggle with things and you just cured from all sin? No, it doesn't happen like that. But like when you have that experience with God, it will change your life, right? So much so that other people will see it, right? I think that's one thing that you can definitely like tangibly like experience how like when somebody else sees that might not even ever know you, never met you before, and be like, man, there's something about you, bro. Like you got that spirit inside you, right? And then when you start meeting other believers and other things, like you can start feeling like how that spirit hits, like when he does. And then like as you start living your life, you can start hearing his voice, right? And I love that because his voice is a very soft whisper, right? And I think we all hear it, but a lot of times like you dismiss it. You be like, oh, that's just a thought, right? And it's whatever, right? But I can promise you, the more you kind of are obedient to that voice, right? Let's say that voice says, "Hey, I need you to give that homeless guy $100." That wasn't. I don't know what that was, right? Like you kind of brush it off, right? But let's say you listen to that, then that voice might get a little louder, and you'll be able to recognize it next time, right? And then something else happens, and you listen and you listen. So when you get to the okay, I want you to move across the country because I have something for you. You know the voice, and maybe uncomfortable. You know you can move with it, right? Because you've built that relationship with it to where it's now you trust it, right? Versus something randomly happened and that voice comes, you're like, whoa, what was that? I'm not about to do that, right? Because you haven't built that relationship up. So it's a process, right? I firmly believe there's an encounter. But to answer your question, how does one kind of get that experience? I think, I mean, it even says in the word, seeking you shall find, right? But you have to, you see, people say that and be like, oh, I'm just gonna open my Bible and read. No, like legitimately seek, right? Like
Yep.
honestly, like God, pray to him and say, God, I need to experience you, right? So whatever it takes, I'm not getting up to this seat until you show yourself, right? And don't move, right? Like or whatever it may be, right? Like diligently seek him like you want your next breath or like you want your next meal or like you want the NFL or whatever. If you could work out 3 times a day, you could study your word 3 times a day and seek him, right? Whatever that thing is. If you want to get this girl or whatever, if you could do all these things and buy flowers, if you could do all that for her, you should be able to get the more for God, right? So once you diligently seek him, and I mean really in your heart seek him, I'm a firm believer he's going to show himself evident.
Dude, you get me so pumped because I have a story. There's a reason why I'm asking. I don't really talk about it with like this with them a lot.
Yeah.
So I had a story kind of like that.
Okay.
I forget what scripture verse it is. It's go up to the mountain and scream to the heavens or shout to the heavens. So I was in Arkansas. I had just gotten over a relationship and it was around Thanksgiving time. And it was something that I don't want to say broke me. I'm in a completely happy relationship now. It kind of led me towards this. But at the time, it was one of those moments where you feel like you're depressed.
Yeah.
And I went up to the mountain. I was in Arkansas in Hot Springs. And I went up to the mountain by myself. I was camping. I wanted to do something completely unorthodox.
Right.
So I go out there, and there's like a little ravine kind of at the bottom. It had like a child's playground.
Mhm.
I kind of kept going down to the bottom and then hiked up to the mountain, and then all of a sudden I just looked up and just screamed.
Let it
And
out.
I was like, oh God, I want somebody in my life that can motivate me for me and push me in business and push me financially, emotionally, and spiritually. And what do you know? 3 months later, I meet a girl, and literally, it's the girl I'm getting married to.
Right.
It's crazy. Sometimes it literally just takes screaming to the
Man.
rooftops.
He says, "Ask and it shall be given," right? Like, and sometimes you have to kind of get to that breaking point to be like, and be really raw and kind of, don't get me wrong, respectful, know who you're talking to, but like, let them know, like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I need. This is what I want. Now, be careful what you ask for,
'Cause
right?
you'll
Like,
get
hey,
it.
you say you want to be married, it comes with some stuff too, or whatever that is. You say you want $1 million, it comes with stuff. But like, God is not this tyrant that's up in the sky that wants to keep his blessings from us, right? It actually says in the word that he is searching throughout the world to bless some people, right? To find people that he can bless, right? But in order for blessings to not to honestly destroy you, you got to be prepared enough to do that, right? So let's say you never go through that breakup with that other person. You don't never get to that point to where you just scream out and call to God and get to that point to where you don't never meet the relationship, right? Everything works together, right? And you really gotta, just walking with God, you gotta really trust and believe that.
So deep.
Do you think
Love that.
do you think like going up through high school and college, do you think that altered your path? I know you said you were going to be you're abstinent, but before that, do you think there's something you did to alter your path from football at all, or do you think that's just always God's path for you? See what I'm saying? Because you said like sometimes when you're doing wrong things, right?
Mhm.
That like it can alter your path. Do you feel like you did something leading up to trying to go pro in football that altered that path, or do you think this was God's calling for you the whole time?
So that's an interesting question, right?
Mhm.
And I've had multiple conversations about, because it's really tricky, right?
Mhm.
Because it's like, is your path already predestined to where it's like this is going to happen, the failures, the successes, everything that's already going to happen, or is it based on your works that can change it, right? By doing something or not doing something. Well, like, I feel like both of those kind of come into play sometimes, right? Because I'm a firm believer, like, God doesn't always bless us because of what we do. It ain't, or what we don't do. Like, because if we got what we deserve, we wouldn't be where we are today, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, sometimes it's not because, oh, I was so diligent and I worked so hard that this is why God's blessing me. No, it's strictly because it's just a gift from Him, and God, I don't even deserve this, right? But when you do that, it's more work based. So you got to be careful, because what happens if you got a bad, like, you just been kind of off the rails sometime, right? And been making bad decisions. You're gonna be looking around your shoulder and waiting for God to like throw some lightning down and mess up your whole world, right? It don't really work that way. So you really gotta definitely work hard and be diligent and do what you can, right? But keep it in perspective to understand that, man, I'm a firm believer. My steps are ordered by God. Every step that I take is already ordered, right? And it's for my good. Now, the perspective of all these failures or all these like successes, that's one thing. Perspective can all be different. Because in God's eyes, we might think one thing is bad, and He's like, no, that's good, right? But we like, no, this is bad. Like, why is this happening? X, Y, and Z. No, our perspective of bad is good is just that, a perspective. Just because, for example, and this is a hard one for people, just because somebody passes, that's not a bad thing, right? If they're with Jesus, if they're in heaven, is that a bad thing? Right? Like, I know sometimes we kind of get so like, dang, they're not from me, or I didn't have this time, or whatever the case may be, right? Or I didn't get this break, or I didn't get that job. We might be looking at it as like, man, this is a bad thing. But God's like, nah, that's exactly what needed to happen to lead you right here so you can meet this person, so you can get here, so you can do that. It all kind of works together, right? So for me, I just kind of trust my process. I try to make the best informed, discerning decisions in the moment. And that's why you got to be able to hear that voice,
Mhm.
right? That's exactly why. Because in those moments, like you said, you can go left or you can go right, right? Now, if you go left, you go the wrong way, God's grace is sufficient, so it could lead you back this way. But thing is, we don't get time back. So all that time, all that pain, all that, people that you may have hurt on the way, you're gonna have to carry that, right? Versus saying, okay, you can go straight and you don't have to experience all that, right? You might still end up on the same place at the same time, but there's less burdens you're gonna have to carry, right?
Something that really interests me too. I know you said you got called gay. People were saying all things about you.
Yeah.
How do you handle? It's happened to me recently a couple of times because I've been stronger in my faith lately than I have been in previous times. This year or starting last year, I've been way stronger in my faith. How do you handle when people defame your faith or like make fun of you for being a Christian or being so
Love this
close to God?
Can I be
How do you
honest?
handle it? Because I don't know if I'm like
Yes.
supposed to be like you don't want to be like get buck consider me like you bro don't I
Yeah.
don't know how do you handle it when people
I
do
love
that?
it. I'm gonna be honest, like, and I know that's a different. I love it, right? And maybe that's the football kind of competitive in me, because I'm like, man, I'm not one of those Christians, right? I'm not one of those Christians that's going like, oh man, why they not this and woe is me and why they talking about me? It's like, nah, this is who I am, and you gonna get all of me, right?
Yeah.
Like unapologetically, right? And just like people can, live firm on this belief or that belief or that belief. No, when you come over here, you better come with it, right? Because I know who God created me to be, and like without a doubt, I know exactly who He created me to be. So when you talk about X, Y, and Z, I'm like, all right, be careful now. Like, and I know people play, oh, God don't play about me, but like, nah, like God really got me, right? And I'm not saying that, oh, you talk about me, He's gonna like strike you down with like, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying in terms of like when you really know who you are in your relationship with God and who He created you to be, man, like what is somebody's opinion going to like? One, I don't even know you. Most of the time, it's people that you don't really know, right? One, I don't even know you. I don't even value your opinion, so it don't matter. Like whatever you're saying, like, all right, cool, like I get that, but and that's why, like, I think as Christians, sometimes you got to be built a little differently, right? You got to understand. One, they talked about Jesus to His face, and then crucified Him on the cross, right? If you can't sustain somebody tweeting some bad stuff or saying that, oh, you this or you that, come on now. Like we got to be tougher than that, right? It's not
Yeah.
like you said earlier, He's creating warriors, right? Like you a warrior. And I look at that physically, but also mentally and spiritually as well. You got to be battle tested to say, you know what? God's calling me in this dark place, whether it's entertainment, finance, real estate, whatever. You about to go take territory. You think the devil's just gonna let you take his territory? No, like you got to be able to be battle tested, right? That's why we put on what? The armor of God every single day, right? So, like for me, I look at it like, all right, one, you letting me know I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing, right? And then two, it just makes me even like ready for battle, right? I kind of look, maybe that's I always say like, I kind of relate to like Super Saiyans a lot, right? You know how like they
Yeah.
thirst for
Love it,
like
yeah.
fighting and they're like, nah, like, let's go get it. You want the best? Come
Post
get
up.
because it's just gonna make you better.
Yeah.
Right. Like even when you talk to people of different faiths or different beliefs, right? Or talk to somebody that lost their faith, talking to them and ministering them and allowing the Spirit to use you, it's gonna encourage you even more. I think so, right? Because you'll be like, all right, we just had a really good conversation. And yes, they had a different perspective, but I was able to defend. I was able to let the guy lead me. I was able to shut up when he told me to shut up. I was able to kind of orchestrate in that or be in that environment and still come out on the other side.
Was there ever a point though where you weren't that way? Like I'm saying, yes, you've always believed in God, but when you believed in God, was there ever a point where you weren't that confident and you weren't that like, I don't care what you say about me? Was there ever a point in your life when you were that way where it actually did bother you?
No, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think so. Because I think like the way God kind of did it with me was like he kind of taught me to have that before like I became on fire for Him, right? So like even in high school, like I did some crazy things. Like for example, like we wear like olive like a lot now, right? But like in 2006, that wasn't like a big color, right? To wear like olive pants and stuff like that. So I had some green jeans I wore to school, and it was just like people was like driving me, and just going crazy, right? A bunch of stuff that happened in high school that it kind of taught me to be like, man, people's always gonna talk. Like, you know what I mean? Like, either we're gonna stand in it and do what you like and do what you want to do, or you gonna always be kind of changing who you are based on what they're saying or don't say, right? Because the people, they don't know what they want. Like 1 second they like this, next second they like it's fleeting, right? So I was like, he kind of taught me that in high school to where when I got in college and I got on fire for God, it was like, no, that same tenacity, that same resiliency, that same strong willness that you had prior, I need that.
So for the people out there listening, who are struggling with this,
Mhm.
because that's what I was really getting at asking this question.
Gotcha.
For the people who are listening out there, socially and spiritually,
Yeah.
what would you say their first step needs to be for them to start gaining that confidence to be that person?
Right. First step, I think it's like a two-part thing,
Yeah.
right? I think first you really have to understand who God created you to be. Period. Right? I think a lot of Christians like they don't really understand who he calls you to be. Right? Like literally go in scripture, go research it of everything that God says about who you are and repeat that to yourself until it's ingrained in your mind to know who he calls you to be, right? God created you for such a time as this to create impact on this world for the kingdom of for his kingdom, right? That ain't nothing light. Like that's not like no, oh, I just created this just on my side. Like, nah, God was intentional when he created you, right? And you have to walk boldly in those order steps. So I would say one, research that, figure out who God created you to be, right? Because I think you look at the world, the devil is just trying to kill our identity. You look at all the way back to Adam and Eve, right? To Jesus, to David, to everybody. He's attacking your identity. That's why you see nowadays, and I don't want to, it is what it is. That's why he wants women to be men and men to be women. He attacks the identity, right? Because once you don't know who you are, you can't be what you're created to be, right? Because if I'm thinking, even to this day, if I'm thinking I'm supposed to be playing in the NFL, right, the whole time, and everything I do is surrounded by that, God could be like, nah, I actually wanted you to own an NFL team. But you so worried about playing, right, that you can't stop from this to do what God really called you to do, right? And that's in every aspect of life, right? You worrying about this girl that ain't showing you no love. Your wife is right around the corner that you have never met before. But since you so focused on this, you're missing out on this, right? So I would say that's the first thing, right? Second thing is you got to find a community. You got to find a community of men, of women, of believers that one live that way, right? One know who they are and stuff, but that's gonna constantly encourage you, right? I had in high school and in college. When I got to college, I met about 4 men that was on that same path, right? In high school, I had about 3, 4 guys that was on that same path. Even now, I got a group of men that's on that same path. Older, younger, some married, some not, some white, some black, like all different backgrounds, right? But now we can do life together and we can sharpen each other, right? That is such a, I know everybody says the scripture, iron sharpens iron, but like to really have people that you can see, hey, this is how he lived out his life, right? One person in my men's group, man, he lost his daughter was like 21 and she went to sleep, didn't wake up, right? This happened maybe a year or two ago, right? And to see how he bounced back and was still in church and still praising and still living with a smile on his face and still like walking it out, it let me know, bro, ain't nothing we can't do without the Spirit, right? To see it, right, and to know him and to see how he interacts with people, man, it's different, bro. And when you're around that, it increases your faith, right? And just like when you live for strong people, you're gonna get strong. It's the same way spiritually.
You talked about something I don't want to pass up. So a lot of people worry about, they're always asking if God is so omnipotent and God has all this power.
Yeah.
Why can't he save a child from dying?
Mhm.
Why can't he save a child from doing this? Why can't he stop hunger? Why can't he stop being poor, poverty?
Yeah.
Why don't you touch on that a little bit?
2 things, right? One, because if he were just to change everything and do everything he wants to a certain extent, because he still does, but it would infringe upon our free will, right? Because like he gives us that gift of free will. And because they're free will, there are people that make bad decisions that have bad consequences, right? Like he can't just say, oh, well, just because people make bad consequences, I'm just going to smooth everything over. Well, then it kills your free will, right? So he gives us that gift of free will, but there's also consequences that comes with that free will, good and bad, right? And I think also that comes with that, people ask why, right? Why me, or why this happened, or why this person died, or why this person hunger. if I'm being honest, and anybody that's ever gone through anything can understand, man, when you experience pain, it teaches you, man, it teaches you differently, right? Like sometimes, like when you lose something and you invested everything and you lost it or you lost that person, it changes your whole lifestyle. It changes your perspective. I firmly believe some people in this world would never get to know God to the magnitude of what he wants you to know him without tragedy, right? Without that pain, right? Because you don't know God's a healer until you need to be healed. You don't know he's a savior until you feel the need to be saved. But the problem is everybody's running around like, oh, I'm good. I'm this. I'm making this thing happen. Okay, cool, right? But there's going to come a time when all these people you calling on, all the money, all the resources, all these things, all these other religion, you calling on them and nothing happening, right? Like nothing's happening. And then there's gonna come a time when you're gonna seek Jesus and you'll be like, man, he changed my life. Right. But you can't get to that if you don't go through that, right? Because now you thinking you good, you thinking this, you thinking like literally, one of my cousins, man, and he'll tell you this. He's like my spiritual mentor now. Man, they went through a crazy tragedy, right? Like they were driving, he just had his firstborn son, right? Car accident, killed his son, right? And to see, and he would say like he was lukewarm, right? Like he knew a God, but go to church every now and then, right? But after that happened and how he sought after God, man, this dude is on fire now, right? His perspective about everything, the way he moves, the way he handles money, his finances, the way he studies the word, it's on a whole different level. And now this was like in 2015. Now he had a girl, he had another girl, and they just had their son, right? So like looking at it now, it's like God needed you to go through that, right? Like he and I know that sounds so hard to understand, right? But God's ways are above our ways, and sometimes He needs you to kind of experience something to really experience what God really has for you, right? And then sometimes, if we're being honest, maybe God had to take him or take that person or whoever it was at that time to save them, right? Maybe, hey, if he would have let them live a little longer, they could have flipped and been living a whole different life, right? But in order for them to be with me in eternity, I needed to take them. Like we don't know, right? So, but you do have to trust and believe that God is a good God, right? And He's faithful, right? And man, I can't see anything. Now you may not understand it, but I can't see anything that God does is bad and to hurt and to harm us, right? It's all for His glory and it's all to kind of get us closer to become more like Jesus.
And the crazy thing is, it could happen at 5 years old. It could happen at 75 years old.
Yeah.
It could happen on your deathbed. It could happen when you're 15.
Yeah.
No matter what the tragic experience is. And that's what I'm so glad you touched on it. A lot of people think, well, why isn't it happening to me now? Kind of what you talked about. Why am I not on fire now?
Right.
Well, sometimes you're not ready for how heavy the armor is. You're not ready.
Man, that's a word in itself. You know what I mean? Because it's some heavy armor, man. Like it really is, especially when you're called to do so many great things, bro. For the kingdom or just for your life, for your legacy, for your family or whatever, for the generations to come. Man, sometimes you might have to be that trailblazer of your family. Everybody before you could have lived a certain way. Now you got to stop the generational curse and you got to shift everything. That comes with a fight. That comes with a battle, right? Like you're going to have to be strapped with the word and ready to kind of fight, right? A lot of times I feel like people don't really want to fight. You know what I mean? And you got to know how to fight. You got to know how to persevere through. And I think as you do this, as you go through that journey, like you'll see, right? Like why I couldn't necessarily do that here, but now I'm here, or now I'm on fire. It's a process, right? You're not going to just wake up one day and be on fire and be, the next Moses or David or whatever. It's not going to happen like that. But as you constantly grow, you're going to get better. You're going to get better. Yeah. You're going to get better.
One thing my grandma told me when I was going through that terrible break, I went through a really bad breakup. I was ready to marry her. And one thing my grandma told me was lean not on your own understanding. And I said, I don't like it. She's like, she said, you don't have to like it.
Right.
She says, but you still have to trust him, whether you like it or not. And I mean, 6-7 months down the line now, and I'm way happier than I've ever been, way closer to God than I've ever been. Like, so I love that when she told me to lean out on my stand, and I was like, I don't like it. I don't like what he's doing right now. She's like, well, just wait and see what he does.
See, here's the thing, and it's gonna be in my book, right?
Yeah.
I have this thing. It's called "Get Out Your Feelings," right? Because your feelings don't matter.
They don't.
Like people keep like, oh, I feel this way. Your feelings don't matter, right? Because if they did, Jesus would never went to the cross because he didn't want to do it, right? You look at all throughout the Bible, all throughout history, people don't want to do. It's not about what you want to do, right? There's some days you might not want to love your wife. You're not called to. It don't matter what you're feeling. You're committed to her. You're not committed to your feelings, right? Because we all know feelings are fleeting. 1 minute you're happy, next minute you're sad, next minute you're angry, next minute you're this. You can't live your life based on your feelings. You're based on emotions that are feelings. You have to be, especially if you're a man, you got to be committed on what you said at the time you said it, long before that mood leaves you, right? So if you saying, okay, God, I'm gonna trust you. I don't feel like trusting you. I don't want to read my word. I don't want to dive into this, but this is what I'm saying. This is what you're going to call me to do, right? And if you play sports before, you know, it don't matter if, oh, I don't want to work up at 5 a.m. Oh, it don't matter. You're going to wake up and you're going to get up and you're going to get that work in at 5 a.m., right? If you don't, there's going to be consequences. You're not going to be as good as you could be. Your team's going to be looking at you. You're going to drop the ball. You know what I mean? So it's not about how you feel. You got commitments. You got responsibilities. You got to do that. And as men, as we, get wives and lead families spiritually, mentally, financially, emotionally, lead kids and train up kids and generations and impact the world, bro, you got to be able to do that. You can't live off your feelings. It's just, it don't work, right? It never worked. It never has worked, right? So yes, understand your feelings, acknowledge them, scream, do what you got to do, work out, do what you got to do to understand the feelings. But at the end of the day, and God, the work still got to get done. The work still got to get done,
Have you heard of the concept of kintsugi or kintsugai? It's a Japanese
What does it say? Because I think
theory.
I have.
It says, can something that's been broken and healed be more beautiful and lovable than it ever has been before? So that if you look at the art, the pieces of art, and you might like this, look up kintsugai. It's KINTSUGAI.
Okay.
And look at the artwork. They take broken pieces of pottery and they put adhesive to it, and they put gold dust inside the adhesive.
Okay.
So they glue it back together, and the piece is actually more beautiful because it's like a black pot with gold in the cracks.
Yeah, that's dope.
It's showing that, like, as you're broken. Yeah, check that out.
Oh, that's cool. That's really dope.
You want to see? Turn around when you can.
Yeah, that's really dope.
So it's showing, like, even if you are broken, that doesn't mean that it can't be more lovable or more beautiful
The
than ever
thing
before.
is, we're all broken, right? That's the whole purpose of Jesus coming, right? Like, we're all broken at some. I don't care what it is, and if you feel like you're not, just keep on living, right? We're all broken at some point, right? So, but that's the greatest part about Jesus, right? That's the whole point of why he came, to heal us, to cast your burdens on him, so he can take that load for you, and he can heal you, and he can wash you as white as snow, right? That's why you fall in love with him, because although you're broken and you don't deserve it, yet he still does it. Man, that just in itself is just like, because it's like one thing, and we could like look at it like this, right? Let's say, you got a girl or whatever, and she cheats on you, right? Does she deserve to be loved again? Does she deserve your forgiveness? Does she deserve to for you to continue to love her? Probably not. But if you keep loving her, you're giving her something that she hasn't earned, right? And I look at that, our relationship with Jesus, right? We sin against him daily, but yet he's still loving us, still blessing us, still right there, right? But we literally cheat on him daily,
Every single
and he's right there. So like how I look at it, even when I get married, that's kind of the energy I want to bring, right? And now we only can do that through the Spirit, don't get me wrong, but I want to be like, man, there's nothing you can do, my wife, nothing you can do that can stop me from loving you, period. Not, conditional if you do this or if you don't do this. Nah, Jesus loves me like that. So why can I not love you like that? That's what he's called. He called me to die for. Jesus says what? Husbands, die for your wives or love your wives as Christ loved the church. What did he do for the church? He died for it. So we got to be able to die for our wives and die for our families. And that means in a literal sense, if need be, but also a mental, emotional, and spiritual sense as well, right? You got to be able to die to your feelings and serve your wife. You got to be able to die to your ambitions sometimes or your dreams and allow your kids to kind of have those dreams, right? Like that's just a part of us being men, right? And I think a lot of times in today's society, we've kind of lost sight of that.
When did you find out you were called to actually write a book?
Oh, it's been a while now.
Yeah.
Like if you see the notes in I got about 3-4 books like in the cooker. Like and it's just I feel like God has kind of invested me or entrusted me with a lot of wisdom and knowledge just through over the years and from people investing me and teaching me that I really believe like he wants to kind of use me in a sense to change different perspectives, right? To allow people to get some hope, right? To lead people closer to him, right? And I think books is also a way to kind of have that and to kind of get that out there so people can, hopefully get their life changed.
You
Yeah,
nailed
so-
it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
You definitely have a different perspective on faith and on that. Like even today, like I'm pretty well known in my faith. Even things you said, I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about it like that.
Yeah.
So your perspective coming in and being a perspective shift for people, dude, you nailed
That
it.
perspective alone can change your whole life, right? It literally can, and just like look at death, right? You just change that perspective of death. Imagine like when I died, I sure hope, man, like the people that are there and stuff, like they celebrate it because one, they know where I'm at, but two, they're like, man, this dude, he died on empty. Everything he got, man, I got books out there, I got videos, I got movies, hopefully, I got all these things out there, right? To where it's like, man, people can look at my life and gain value and see, man, he ran the race, right? And he did it. And was he perfect? No, but like he made an impact on this world for God, right? That's why you look at my social media, it says Christ is King. My name is Christopher Harrison King, right? And he told that's really when things shift. He kind of showed me like the meaning of that, right? It says Christ is King, Christopher King. Like my last name means something, right? King. I take that with 100%. But it only means something because Christ is first. And as long as I keep Christ in first, I'm gonna be good. So like that's why my name is Christ is King, and I always try to keep that perspective of it to where it's like, this is great, that part is great, but this has to be the focus first in everything we do, in anything we do, right?
So we're almost out of time, but I wanted to get one more question in. So
That went fast.
for the
I know.
people, it may be simple to us. For the people that don't know God out there,
Mhm.
who are looking to take that first step, what is your advice to them?
Talk to me.
Okay. Advice. I would say, honestly, it kind of ties in what we said earlier about just like honestly seeking him, right? Sometimes we have to just get alone with God and be like, all right, God, um, I've been hearing a lot of things you've been saying. People been talking to me, or you've been putting people in my line of view, right? I really want to see if this thing is true. If you are who you say you are, right? And I honestly, I'm 100%. I guarantee you, if you search him with that kind of heart, right, of honestly trying to seek him
Being humble.
and man, and you be like, God, what I really want to get to know you. I'm a firm believer he will make himself evident in your life. Now, the tricky part is you gotta be very open to how he's going to do that because he could do that through a bunch of different ways, right? So you have to kind of be open to how he's going to reveal himself to you, right? But I'm a firm believer if you seek that, if you seek him in that, right, and get in your word and just read, just go start with the gospel, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? You start with the gospel and start reading, man. Who is Jesus, right? And then ask as you're reading, as you're praying, God, I need you to show me this, right? And if you are, because you said speak to me, man, this ain't a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah.
Like this, I was here. It might just be just for this, right? And this is the, I guess, nudge or push you needed to be like, all right, let me really kind of dive in just to see.
That's how
Right.
I'm feeling for sure. This has been pretty powerful.
Hey, keep in mind, seek and ye shall find.
Man,
Hmm.
I guarantee you, bro. If you seek it just like that, bro. I'm a firm believer he would change your life forever. Because when I mean, and people be like, oh man, how you know, how you believe? I met him.
Hmm.
Like I talked to the creator of the universe. Think about that. The creator of the universe.
Right.
Not the sun, not stars, not Buddha, not Joseph Smith. The creator of the universe I speak to and he speaks back to me. Like that's just mind blowing. You
That's
know what I
heavy.
mean? And to like the perspective I even have with a lot of the things, it all comes from him. Art, it comes from him. The design, it comes from him. The ability to work, the ability to create impact in books and all this, it all comes from him. The ability to hopefully be a great husband one day and a father one, it all comes from him.
Hmm.
Right? I always say it like this, and it's gonna be in my book too. The Holy Spirit is my superpower. You know how, like, Superman, he gets stronger when he gets to the sun?
Yeah.
We get stronger when we get to the sun. It's just a different sun.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
just the closer you get to him, the stronger you gonna get. Right? So it's just you gotta understand what your superpower really is. And the trick is the devil don't want you to know that.
Sure.
Because once you know that, he knows when you know who you are, he don't have nothing.
Game over.
Right? Like, because God gives us dominion over this world. Right? But he only gives us dominion when we're operating who we created to be. Right? If you're outside of who you created to be, you don't get dominion over everything in this world. But once you start operating who he calls you to be, dominion.
It's something I feel like I've always struggled with, especially recently, is like figuring out who am I created to be.
Yeah.
So that'll
Asking.
it's going to be an interesting journey.
No,
Looking
it
forward to
really is. It really is because like it's a process. Don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but I'm a firm believer and don't. Sometimes it doesn't even come like all at once, right? So like even for me, like there was times I thought it was the NFL, right? And then it was like, okay, author, and it was like, no, well, attorney, and then it was like, oh, artist, or oh this, or oh this, or real estate. All that I believe I'm all of those things,
Yeah.
right? Now, how life kind of works is like there's gonna be certain seasons where now this is gonna take the lead, and you're gonna learn this about who you are. And God's gonna teach you certain things about disciplines and life lessons and things to be a great father, right?
Right.
Then there's gonna be times he's got to teach you to be a great husband, right? And you're gonna have to learn different things from different people and different, like there's so many different aspects of who you are, who you created, he created you to be, to where it's like it's a process and a journey of learning.
Talk that talk.
Man,
To get into heaven, know me by name. I forget the exact scripture.
Man.
He says the only way to get into heaven is if you know me by my name.
so here's this, right? And we could touch on that like a little bit real quick. I know a lot of times in this world, people be like, oh, and even you got famous people that call themselves believers that say, you know what, yeah, man, I believe there's multiple ways to get to heaven, and who am I to say that this is a wrong? No, I'm saying it right now. There's only one way to get to heaven, period, and it's through Jesus Christ. Because here's the thing: either Jesus was a liar,
Mhm.
and he wasn't who he says he was, right? And all the other religions are true, right? Or he was saying the truth, and all these other religions are lies. It can't be both.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like those two things can't be true. So either Jesus was lie and all these other things are false, or Jesus was telling the truth and all these other things, it's a lie. Like I feel like people say that just to make you feel good, but that's just the devil deceiving you, right? When you really know him, and I'm gonna pray over you after this, because like when you experience him, you're gonna be like, it's unexplainable,
Mhm.
right? And then you're gonna know I'm gonna be secure in heaven. Like it's not gonna be like, oh man, I wonder. Hopefully, it's like, nah, God, like I know I'm gonna be there with you. Like you're gonna have such confidence in it, right? Because you know who he is and you know he's your Lord and Savior. And bro, that alone is life changing. It's life changing, bro.
Man, that's so powerful. Look, Chris, we're gonna have to have you on again because next time I want to
Yes.
pick your business mind more.
Okay.
Also,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
look, shout out your Instagram one more time before we let you go. All your business stuff, so everybody can go. check
Yeah,
it out.
yeah. All right. Quick shout out, elevator pitch. My name is Christopher King. I'm Esquire from New Orleans, Louisiana. I live in Baton Rouge right now. The King Law Firm. Go check us out, right? But you can check my Instagram page, YouTube pages. Christ is King ESQ. Look, I got a lot of good content out there. Got a lot of podcasts, a lot of videos. Follow my art page, Christ is King Artistry. And then follow, the personal injury pays if you ever get in an accident in Louisiana. I gotta throw that in there. If you ever get in an accident in Louisiana, hey, call the king, man. Lawyer up.
I'll put
But,
links to all that.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. We
yeah.
appreciate you so much. Look, that's Kyler Dorsey. That's Ian Landry. My name is Brandon Obey. This is the Overloaded Podcast, and we are out. Peace.